Hey guys. I think that test your understanding 2.7 is a little bit confusing, so I thought we could talk about how to do it together just for a second. So we're given a QD quantity demanded and the quantity supplied, and then the textbook just gives us those. So it's 500 minus 2p, and then for QS, it is negative 100 minus, plus 2p. All right, so these just are our equations then. And what we need to do is we need to find two things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the equilibrium. All right, the equilibrium we know is the moment when QD equals QS. So that's actually fairly straightforward. We can just say that QD equals QS. So we can just say that 500 minus 2p equals negative 100 plus 2p. All right. Now I'll add 100 to both sides. All right. I'll add 2p to both sides. I'll divide both sides by 4. All right, so now I know that 150 equals the equilibrium price. What's the equilibrium quantity? Well, now I can just come back for QD, all right? And now I know that QD at equilibrium equals 500 minus 2 150s, all right? So that equals 300. 500 minus 300 is 200. So quantity demanded is 200. So now I have my and I could have just done the same thing here. I could have said quantity supplied equals negative 200 plus, and now we'll just check, 2p is 300. 300 plus negative 100 is 200. So it's going to be the same each way that you go through it. All right, so then, at this point, we know our equilibrium quantity, and we know our equilibrium price. So at this point, we know 1 point. We know 1 point on our graph. All right, 1 point on our graph here comes in at a quantity of 200 and a price of 150. Now, to draw a line, we're going to need to have 2 points on each line. So we have to find one other point. Now, we actually already know another point on each line because these numbers right here, these are the q-intercepts. Negative 100, I don't know, should be about here, and positive 500 is probably about here. All right, so if I wanted to, I could use these numbers to give me a rough approximation of the supply curve and of the demand curve. But I'd like to suggest one other way to do that for you. And the other way to do that for you is to figure out the p-intercept. You can determine the p-intercept just by setting your quantity equal to 0. All right? Because we know that Q is 0 at the p-intercept. So for our quantity demanded, when QD equals 0, all right, what is the value of P? Well, so 0 equals 500 minus 2p. So 2p must be equal to 500. So 1p must be 250. Now we can do the same thing for supply. Supply equals 0. So negative 100 plus 2p must equal 0. 2p must equal 50. All right? And now you can see we actually have a line that we can come in with here. Starts at the negative 100, negative 100 being the intercept, comes through 50, and then hits my equilibrium point. So I actually had 3 lines I could do there. My p-intercept line, my q-intercept line, and my equilibrium. I'm just going to make sure I label this as supply. All right, and now for my demand, once again, I have these 3 points. I hope it matches up. Remember, I just guessed where 500 should be, so I'm really going to try to match up the 250 and the equilibrium. All right, so you can see I was a little bit off in my guess. Whoop. So at this point then, I've done the first stages of the question. I've graphed it, I have the equilibrium, and now what they want me to do is they want me to consider at different points what exactly we're dealing with. Are we dealing with excess supply or excess demand? So we essentially can create a chart here. That has demand, supply, and price. This is actually quantity supplied and quantity demanded. All right. Now, what the book gives us is the book just gives us the price. It says 190, 170, 125, and 85. So what it's essentially asking me to do now is it's asking me to plug these p's into my equations here. All right. So if we just come back, we see that QD equals 500 minus 2p, QS equals negative 100 plus 2p. All right. So now I just have to take 190 and say, what is 500 minus 2 times 190? All right. So, well, 120. All right. What is 500 minus 2 times 170? Well, 170 times 2 is 340. So then it's 160. All right. Now at this point, I see that these prices, right, are all above the equilibrium price, and these prices are below. Textbook's giving me nice examples of each. So actually, I know that when the price is above equilibrium, there's going to be excess supply, all right, or what we call a surplus. And when it's below, there's going to be excess demand, or what's known as a shortage. Right? I already know that, but the book is interested in what is the quantity of that surplus or that shortage. So I'm going to have to run through the numbers. So 2 times 125, 250, 500, okay. And 85 should come out to be 330. All right, this makes sense. That as the price decreases, demand increases. That's exactly what we hope our demand curve should say. So now for supply, I'm just going to come back and I'm going to plug it in the exact same way. So for my supply curve, I can just say negative 100 plus, and now 2 times this. So this was 380 minus 100 is 280. All right, 280. And now as you work your way through, I'm just going to go a little bit faster, 240, 150, 70. As price drops, quantity supplied drops, exactly like we would expect. And so now we just need to come up with the difference between these two numbers if we want to determine the amount of surplus. 160, 80. So here we would say at a price of 170, there is a surplus of 80 units. But if the price drops to 125, there is a shortage of 100 units. Consumers are willing and able to buy 100 units more than suppliers are willing to supply them. And then so on and so forth. So we can come down here and it's 260. All right, so that's what the first question is asking you to do. All right, so we could have plotted those points along here. Of course, just as an example, at a price of 190, right, we were always going to be in this upper range, which was going to be our surplus. And down here was going to be our shortage. All right, guys, I hope that helped. And good luck with the rest of Test Your Understanding.